Bob, it is good to see you again.
It's even
You
better to
have
be here.
you have one of the richest libraries of stories of any man I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, and I was wondering if tonight you wouldn't mind sharing one that's close to your heart.
So, actually, I should tell you that there's somebody that has better stories than me. And now I look like Ken Blanchard. I'll put those on later when I tell you my Ken Blanchard story. But the well, it's interesting. So, as you know, I was sick for about 6 weeks after coming back from ATD. I got terrible diarrhea. I hope this isn't too much information for our viewers. Uh, Projectile vomiting, and I was in 3 hospitals 5 times for 6 weeks with maybe a day in between. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker. And finally, I decided, look, I'm going to go on a hospice because this isn't working. I've been doing my immunotherapy for cancer for 2.5 years. They thought it was C. diff. They tried everything to get rid of it. That's not it. And so we finally landed just as I left the hospital on, well, maybe my immunotherapy has falsely caused my immune system to attack my colon, which is what's causing the diarrhea. So I said, well, the only way I can treat it differently is if I go on hospice. And so my choice was back to the hospital, hospice, and I chose hospice. And 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 a lot of people, when they hear that, they go, "Oh, he's going to die." And I go, "Well, I could die." But basically, hospice is a different type of treatment. They treat for comfort and pain management, and so they use totally different modalities, totally different drugs when needed. And so we began treating it from that perspective. And my wife put me on this really strict diet. I'd stand up and show you my flat tummy, but I don't want to brag that much. And but I mean, I call it the death diet. I mean, I lost 29 pounds in 5 weeks, so I don't recommend that for anybody. And certainly not having cancer is far preferable to be having cancer and being skinny. Although nobody would claim that I'm skinny yet. So at any rate, I said I'm going to go on hospice. I'm going to get the treatment. The protocols have been working. Andrea has, my wife has just done a phenomenal job of cooking me 5, 6 small meals a day because I can only eat small meals. She has to push to get 1,500 to 2,000 calories in me because I'm just not hungry. And, but we've done that and it has now been working. And so it has been now 4 weeks since I had any diarrhea. And so I just praise God for that. So anyway, so I said, I'm going on a hospice. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think I'm getting ready to die. Matter of fact, one of my daughters didn't even want to come see me because it's like, well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to give you morphine and it's going to kill you. Morphine just kills you. And I go, well, morphine doesn't just kill you. And besides, if I don't have pain, I don't take morphine because I want to be in my right mind. I don't want to be loopy all day long because to me, being loopy doesn't mean you're comfortable. And so anyway, so I'm kind of out of it because I just made this decision and I'm not feeling all that strong. And so, so somebody, I think Kathy Dempsey probably said, well, you've done your funeral arrangements. I said, yeah. And she said, well, we should do a celebration of life. We should celebrate you while you're still here. And I thought, oh, okay, I don't even have the energy to try to think like that. If you guys want to do that, that's fine. This is like a Wednesday. I said, okay, or no, Tuesday. All right, we're going to do a celebration of life this Saturday. And people that are in the Phoenix area can just come to the house uh, and because we have a fairly large entertaining area, and then we can do people via Zoom. And so then somebody at NSA said, well, we'll help organize it. And Dan Schinder did all of the on-site tech support here. Well, then I called John Chen, who I consider the master virtual engagement guy. And he said, I would love to help do the virtual part. And so that's all I knew until Saturday. And all of a sudden, Dan shows up with all of the tech for here. John's got all the tech loaded up in Seattle. And so we had about, I would say 80, 90 people come to the house. And then we had about another 200 or so online. And so as we did a pre-show, if you will. And so everybody was coming online, and John was interviewing them, and they were making comments about me, even though the audience that was live couldn't hear it. And the audience that were live were greeting one another, talking to me, that kind of thing. Anyway, it was a fabulous celebration. And to me, one of the most powerful things was that Jesus was clearly lifted up, and lots of people talked about all of the trainers that I've impacted and that kind of thing, and it was nice to hear all of those things, but frankly, it was humbling. And I also realized that there are areas of my life that I've not shined in. I mean, yes, I've shined as a trainer, I've shined as a business person. I shined as a financial provider of my children, but I failed miserably as being actually a dad because I was always running from the pain. It was painful to keep fighting with their mother, and it was painful to. She was super mom. I could never be super dad. And in hindsight, it's like, don't be super dad. Be the best Bob. And I would say to you, it's not a competition, but I, in my mind, treat it as a competition that are watching. You may have great careers, but put your family first. Put your family first. Actually, put God first. Then put your family second, and then the career will take care of itself. Because at the end of the day, I've written 40-something books. I can guarantee you that on my deathbed, I'm not going to be thinking about, I just couldn't get 45 cranked out. I'll be thinking about the regrets that I've had, even though I've been forgiven. And so at the end, I had a chance to just share some thoughts. And I said, lots of people talked about all the trainers that I've impacted and other people that I've impacted, and people that have been able to impact through Lead Like Jesus. But I would rather have 5 people that hear this celebration today make a decision to follow Jesus as I have, than to have 5,000 choose to be better trainers because of me. And so the most interesting thing about the celebration is, like, Ken Blanchard came on right near the beginning, and he said, wow, this is a great idea. And he said something like, I've stolen a lot of stuff from you over the years. And actually, he just researched a lot of stuff from me. I didn't steal it, and if he'd asked, I'd have given him permission to use it anyway. But he said, this is the best idea yet, and so I'm stealing this. We're going to have a celebration of my life. And I thought, wow, Ken Blanchard thinks this is pretty cool, then I guess this is really pretty cool. So that's kind of the story of the celebration. And it was just an amazing time. And so when I actually die, I'm not going to have a memorial. I'm going to be cremated. And our church has a thing where I pay $100, and they either take an existing tree on the property or plant a tree, and my ashes go underneath the tree with a brass plate. And I thought, people are going to be able to visit me more often on the way into church than if we park me somewhere at a cemetery where you pay $8,000 for a little square box to put your ashes in. And so Andrea won't have to worry about a memorial, choosing songs, who's going to be here, who's going to fly in, who's going to fly out. Two of my kids did fly in for it. Another two are coming out for a visit, and so it was just fabulous. So the second thing, because you talked about stories, so the Sunday after, so the very next day, I was able to go to church, and Trish Ewell, a good friend that I've worked with for over 20 years, who lives in Chicago, had flown out to spend a couple of days with me, and Andrea needed some respite, so Trish took me to church, and it was Youth Sunday, so we were celebrating all the things that the youth had done and accomplished and contributed this summer. And one of the things was that 20 of our youths had gone to what's called NYC. And I thought they went to New York City, but it's the Nazarene Youth Conference. And so there were 24 of 10,000 people in Tampa Bay in an indoor auditorium. And one of the youth leaders, who's a full-time businessman, talked, and he said, when I was about 18 or 19, I thought that God had put a call on my life to preach. But he said, I was just never sure. I was just never sure. So I never committed. And now I'm in my mid-40s. And so I went to youth conference. Yes, we're there for the youth. But I said, Lord, if you now want me in ministry, I'd like you to give me a sign. I know I shouldn't be asking for a sign, but I'm asking for a sign anyway. Give me a word that if I hear it from the main stage, I'll know this is your word to me. And I thought about the fleece. Lord, I'm going to lay out a fleece. Let it be dry, everything else be wet. And it was. And it's like, no, that's not good enough. Okay, let's try it again. Let everything wet. Let the fleece be wet, everything else be dry. And it was. It was like, it's like, okay, how many times do you need to test God? I mean, God doesn't deserve to be tested at all. He already got aces and everything. And so anyway, so he's listening to sermon after sermon during the week. They get to the last day, the last general session, and this African group that sings in Swahili and then interprets it came out, and they sang a song. And they said, now the second song is Zoom. Oh, and by the way, the word that God gave him was bazooka. Okay, now you think about how on earth is God going to work the word bazooka onto the main platform? And so he's listening and listening. So this group comes on. And their second song, they said, our second song is going to be Zoom Bazooka, which means your dawn is coming. And he said, okay, I must not have heard that right. But as they sang the song, he said, I probably heard 25 times Zoom Bazooka, because it was part of the chorus. Zoom Bazooka, Zoom Bazooka. And he said, okay, God, I've got my word. And so he was sharing that as part of our church service. Well, then about 20 minutes later, the service was ended. The last song was had this line in it: If I'm not dead, you're not done. And I thought, everybody thinks because I'm on, not everybody. Many people think because you're on hospice, it means you're on this downward curve to dying. Well, actually, people can get better and come off hospice. And I had 3 people come up to me at the celebration and say, Bob, we believe God's going to heal you. And I said, I'm willing to go or I'm willing to stay. I would gladly accept his healing. And three other people that were watching via Zoom followed up afterwards and said, God just kept saying, Bob is going to be healed. And I thought, okay, well, that's six. Um, and and I've got to tell you, I feel 100% better today than I felt a month ago. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and the refrain was, if I'm not dead, you're not done. And I thought, okay, God, that's my word. I'm not dead. So even if I'm in hospice, my job is not to lay here and say, okay, how many days until I die? My job is I'm alive today. What am I going to do to add value and make a difference the way I've done every other day of my 76 years? And add value to my family, add value to the people that I've had the privilege of working with, and add value to you because we're transitioning everything to you to keep my legacy going. And I deeply appreciate the commitment that you've made. So anyway, that's my second story. And we snuck the Ken Blanchard story in there too.
Fantastic. It's amazing to me that in 4 days, you said it was Tuesday when they came up with the idea, Saturday when they executed it.
Well, yeah, it was Tuesday
just
afternoon,
about 4 days to actually make that happen.
And the other thing that's interesting is so Dan Schinder, in 10 years, built a following of 1.1 million people on Facebook without spending any ad money, no spend, all organic. 10 years, 1.1 million people. He used to be, he's still a professional drummer, but he doesn't actually try to make a living drumming. And so he was doing the on-site tech. Well, so Wednesday night, he lives up in Globe, Arizona, about 90 miles from us. He and his wife Inja heard this kind of scraping, and their three dogs started barking. And what had happened is they're right next to a major highway going through Globe, and a tanker truck was pulling another trailer. So you got about that 40-foot tanker, and then you got about a 40-foot trailer that follows it. The coupling broke loose. The trailer slid across the highway and crashed into the front of their house, crushing it in and destroying Inja's studio showroom that she had just been in 30 minutes before. Now, so the next day I'm talking to Dan. He said, oh, yeah, we have this going. And I go, well, maybe we should just change this. No, he said, we're still going to do it. I'm going, if somebody took out half the front of my house, I'm not sure I'd be trying to help produce something on Saturday. But, he got his part done. John got his part done. And so you think about it, how many people have like 9 iPads? Well, he does, because when they go to music conferences, they take the iPads to do interviews. So he had everything to be able to do a 3-camera setup. He had a switcher. John had a switcher. And both John and Dan were just simpatico. They were just totally understood what each other was trying to do, what each other's role was. And so it's amazing how the technology part came together, and the virtual people felt very engaged because of what John was able to do online with them. And everybody, obviously, they're live, felt engaged because it was going on right around them. And then I got to tell people, we're about 15 minutes before the start, and Duane walks through the door. He had flown out just to be at the celebration and then turned around and flew back. And it blew me away because I looked up and I go, and have you ever seen somebody that doesn't belong? And so even though you know them, you don't recognize them? And I look up and I go, Duane, what are you doing here? Which is actually, when you think about it, kind of a stupid question. It's like, Okay, well, if you're here, it's because you plan to be here. Uh, but yeah, right.
I was
And
just in the neighborhood.
so anyway, I felt um, very honored and blessed that you took the time to do that. So I want to say thank you to you as well, Duane.
Of course, I think what we saw there was the dedication and appreciation of a life of a lifetime of someone living the mantra of create value and make a difference, which is very much a giving mantra, not a selfish mantra. And I think what we saw there were people who had experienced that philosophy and were appreciative of that philosophy, and frankly loved the man who
The
espoused it. So
matter of fact,
I now have a new line too. So if I'm working with someone and they say, "Well, that can't be done," I can just look at them and say, "Well, did a tanker truck crash into your house? If not,
yeah,
then it can be
let me.
done."
I'm just going to try to find something really quick because a couple of days later, if if there's a place for me, I'd like to uh, do it virtually. And she said, well, let's see what happens as we go along. And so, anyway, about 4 or 5 days ago, I got this letter from Tony Bingham, who's president of ATD. It says, Dear Bob, thank you for inviting ATD to your celebration. We hope it was an enjoyable time with friends, family, and colleagues. On behalf of the entire community, we send our support and best wishes to you, and most especially our gratitude. You've contributed so much to ASTD and ATD community during your impressive 50-plus year career, having generously shared content, advice, and expertise with our local chapters and global community. Every year since 1977, without exception, you presented at the International Conference and Expo. And while we know it was a can't-miss event for you, it was our attendees that never missed the opportunity to hear from you in person and virtually. Across many countries, you've been a leader, a mentor, and friend to thousands of talent development professionals. Your legacy in the field is wide and deep, and we have benefited from the expertise you've shared. We were honored to recognize you with the ATD Lifetime Achievement Award in 2021 and to celebrate your many career achievements and your impact on the field with friends and colleagues from across the profession. It was a special evening, and we hope you have fond memories of it. Thank you for your positive influence on the lives of so many talent development professionals and the many hours you've contributed to helping ATD create a world that works better. We're deeply grateful. Warm wishes, Tony. And so now we're kind of set to work with them on a virtual. And I've reached out to Training Magazine and asked to do the same thing because I've presented at every one of their conferences since they started as well. And I'm trying to.
I assume that you'll be having John Chen help you out with
John
that.
has already agreed to help me with ATD, and also TechSmith will, because I'm a big believer in TechSmith's Camtasia and Snagit, and they're they're uh, they're really great products and a number of things for them. So I think they'll also help out. But what I want to do is just really create 60 minutes that blows people's minds, and it's going to be my top 10 design and delivery strategies from 50 years. And so we'll see how that goes.
I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it. How would you want to close this podcast up?
Well, I think the big thing is just realizing that all of us have stories, and unless you're dead, your final chapter hasn't finished. So some of you may be watching this and you're in your 20s, and I run into people that say my life is over, it's ruined, and I'm going, you're 20, your life hasn't even started. I don't care how you've screwed up. Um, if you're humble and you confess and you try to right your wrongs, and you just basically say, look, up to now this is what it's been, but here's what's going to be from this day forward. And some of you are in your 30s and 40s. Very few of you. I would doubt that one person watching this is older than I am. And if at age 76, I believe that God is still in the business of forgiving, empowering, equipping, and that He has a plan for me, well, then I guarantee you that He has a plan for you. And so I guess the way I would sign off is, seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. It's when we put God number one in our lives that we're then freed up to do everything else. And frankly, it's in those times when I haven't, when I've, if you will, taken Him off the throne and said, well, here's this sin, and it really doesn't hurt anybody. It's like, well, it hurts God, and God loves me unconditionally. And I say that I love God, but then I would go ahead and do this. And then I'm foolish enough to think that I can keep it a secret from Him. It's like, boy, oh boy, are you arrogant? If Adam and Eve couldn't hide from God, what makes you think you can? And so I think that whole issue of today, more than ever before, it is important for us to live our values, walk our values. And I remember as a Boy Scout, we learned that a Boy Scout was trustworthy, loyal, friendly, cheerful, thrifty, brave, obedient, and kind. And I think I might have missed one. But then as we grow up, we kind of move away from those things. Well, those things haven't changed. Honesty and integrity are still important. I mean, do you want to work with someone who's honest and whom you respect, or someone who's dishonest and who steals your ideas? And we'd always say, well, I want honesty and I want respect and I want somebody who applauds my ideas. Well, then let's start being that kind of person too. We have the ability to make huge changes. I started as a trainer in 1969, and I was 22 years old, and I looked like I was 15. And my influence at the beginning wasn't that great, but every time I presented, it was with the idea that I want to add value and make a difference to this group. It was never, ever about me. I was never the show. I was never the showman. My job was to empower, inspire, and equip. And I believe I got that right from the beginning. And I think that's the focus of all of these podcasts. It's about empowering and equipping people. Not about what I've done, not about what you've done, but only from the standpoint that if this is something that worked for me, I guarantee that it can work for you. But you have to use it like Master Yoda said, do or do not. There is no try. Try is probably one of the weakest words in the world. I'll try. It means I'm going to fail, but I'm going to be able to tell you I tried. So let it be written, so let it be done.